Nope.
I glanced out the window to see that the sky had faded to a dark shade of blue, signaling that it was time for the multitude of costume-clad children to begin descending upon the streets in search of their sweet and sugary treasures. As I sat on my couch with a big bowl of candy in my lap, I could hear the faint murmurs of laughter that ushered in the dawn of trick-or-treating. I've always loved Halloween, ever since I was a kid. Back in the Halloweens of my youth, my friends and I would roam the streets, hauling sacks full of candy while adorned in the costumes of superheroes and other characters we admired. To us, Halloween was magical because on that one night of the year, we could be anything we wanted to be, or go wherever we wanted to go, fueled only by sugar and wonder. On that one night, we were truly free. But now at the age of 41, being far too old to go trick-or-treating, and having no friends, all I could do to enjoy Halloween was hand out candy, drink some beer, and reminisce about the wonderful Halloweens of my adolescence. Also, it gave me a chance to interact with people, which was something I hadn't done much of. For years, I've been plagued with depression and anxiety, which was ultimately the reason why I didn't have any friends. There was a time that I tried desperately to hang on to the friendships I had, but by the time I realized that there was only so much self-loathing and awkwardness a person could put up with, it was too late. All my friends had fled, and I was left with the sharp and deep pain of loneliness. After a few failed attempts at making new friends, the pain of loneliness eventually dulled to an endurable ache, and I eventually came to the realization that I was better off being alone. For years, I'd been content to keep to myself at home, only ever venturing out to go to work or get food. But Halloween was the one night of the year where my mental health issues miraculously dissipated, and I could interact with people without them getting in the way. Sure, these interactions were brief, and mostly with children, but they still felt meaningful to me in their own way. Aside from a few social interactions at work, the ones I had on Halloween were, to be honest, what really kept my suicidal tendencies at bay and got me through the rest of the year. It wasn't long after the first signs of the candy hunters were detected before my doorbell rang. Clutching the candy bowl, I made my way over to the front door and excitedly flung it open. "Trick or treat!" exclaimed a pint-sized Iron Man standing next to a woman dressed in a witch costume, who I assumed to be his mother. I complimented both of them on their costumes as I grabbed a handful of candy and dropped it into the kid's outstretched pillowcase. A sigh of joy that felt as if it had been pent up for months escaped my lungs as I watched them walk away gleefully into the night. I spent the next few hours repeating the process of dispensing candy to the myriad of costume trick-or-treaters that came to my door until they became fewer and fewer, eventually stopping altogether at around 10 o'clock. Figuring the trick-or-treaters were done for the night, I decided to get some gaming in before I went to bed. After a couple of hours passed, and just as I was about to get up to head to bed, I heard a knock at my door. I checked my phone to see that it was 11:59 p.m. I thought it was strange that a kid would still be trick-or-treating that late, but I figured they saw my light on and thought they'd see if I had some candy left. I grabbed the bowl, which still had a few candy bars in it, and opened the door. I was ready to empty the bowl into my late-night visitor's bag, but to my surprise, nobody was there. I looked around my front porch, but I didn't see anybody. Figuring it was a prank, I closed the door locked it, and proceeded to my bed to get some sleep. A small pang of dread hit me at the realization that I had to work the next day, but I sighed and shook it off as I had done countless times before. I awoke the next morning, feeling slightly hungover, but it was nothing a few eggs and a large cup of coffee couldn't fix. It was these types of mornings that made me glad I worked at a call center where I sat on my ass all day. I always thought it was ironic that a person like me, with my mental afflictions, had a job that required talking to people on the phone all day. But then again, trying to sell people things was much different than trying to have a meaningful conversation with them. After a long day at work, I came home to unwind the way I always did, with beer and video games. I was about an hour into my gaming session when I felt my phone vibrate. I checked it to see that it was Sherry, an elderly lady I worked with. We weren't exactly friends, but we chatted occasionally when the calls were slow. I answered the phone, and she immediately asked why I hadn't shown up for work. The question stunned me, and it took me a few seconds for me to comprehend what she had asked, because not only had I been at work, but I had talked to her for a bit in between calls. I remember her telling me how excited she was that her granddaughter was going to visit her over the weekend. But when I reminded her about our conversation, she said that she didn't know what I was talking about, and that she didn't even have a granddaughter. Sherry told me that she had called because our boss had asked her to inform me that if I missed another day of work without calling, then I would be fired. I assured her that I would definitely make it into work the next day before hanging up. I sat staring at my phone, very confused. Why would Sherry say that I hadn't shown up for work when she not only saw me, but actually talked to me? I immediately ruled out that it was a prank, because I had been working with her for years, and she was definitely not the prank-pulling type of person. I then remembered the camera I had installed on my porch due to a package being stolen a few months back. I went into the camera app and looked through the footage, but I didn't see myself leaving the house. I must have scrolled through the footage a dozen times, but I didn't see any trace of myself leaving for work. A feeling of dread crawled through my stomach and worked its way up my spine. Something very strange had happened, and I needed to know what was going on. The next day, I decided to leave my phone propped up and recording on the windowsill. It had a clear view of my living room and kitchen. I didn't know what I expected it to record, but if nothing else, it would help me prove that I had indeed been at work all day. It would be inconvenient not having my phone with me, but it was a small sacrifice to make for the sake of my sanity. After arriving to work, I immediately walked up to Sherry and made her aware of my presence. She seemed glad to see me, and we chatted for a bit before taking calls. When I arrived home after work, I was exhausted from talking on the phone all day, and all I wanted to do was unwind with a tall glass of pale ale and continue the quest I was on in my game. After a couple of hours of gaming and drinking, I heard my phone make a short buzz, indicating that it had received a text. I had totally forgotten that I left it recording on the windowsill. Swiftly, I retrieved it. I looked to see that it was a text from Sherry. It read that I had been fired for not showing up again, and that she hoped I was okay. A panic began to set in as I frantically pulled up the footage that my phone had recorded, and what I saw shocked me to my very core. The footage showed that I had set my phone on the windowsill. I slowly walked into the kitchen and stood facing the wall. I watched in horror as I just stood there, unmoving, staring blankly at the wall. I sped up the video, until I saw myself walk to the refrigerator, grab a beer, and make my way into the living room to start gaming. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was as if I was in some kind of trance, and somehow I imagined that I had spent all day at work. But it all seemed so real. How was that even possible? I spent the next few hours searching the internet, looking for any answers as to what could be happening to me. Eventually, I came across an article that described a phenomenon that was similar to what I had experienced. It was about a woman that was found dead from starvation after being unable to leave their home for 5 weeks. A journal was recovered from the home, and in it, the woman claimed she was unable to leave her home, but she didn't know why. The article went on to conclude that an expert in the paranormal had speculated the woman's death was most likely due to a lonely spirit attaching itself to her. My subsequent inquiry into lonely spirits greatly disturbed me. According to my research, lonely spirits are spirits that are alone in the spirit realm and search desperately for an end to their loneliness. Somehow, only on Halloween night, they are able to leave the spirit realm and enter the mortal realm. Although these spirits cannot touch the living directly, they are still very dangerous because they have the ability to change a person's memories and manipulate the concept of reality. Most importantly, a lonely spirit cannot attach itself to you unless you invite it to. I concluded that I must have unknowingly invited it after opening my door to what I thought was the last trick-or-treater of the night. This was all further confirmed when I read that these spirits are attracted to people who are also lonely. So desperate are they to end their loneliness that they will attempt to kill those they attach themselves to, so they can join them in the spirit realm. But what I found most disturbing of all was the fact that, to current knowledge, there was no known way to get rid of a lonely spirit once it attached itself to a host. At first, I couldn't believe it. I was never one to believe in ghosts or spirits, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. After all, I couldn't think of a better explanation for what was happening to me. All of it was so overwhelming, and all I wanted to do was get out of the house for a while. My stomach rumbled, and I realized I hadn't eaten all day. A part of me still believed that the spirit theory was bullshit, and I had simply experienced some kind of medical phenomenon. It was something I would most likely need to get treatment for in the future, but at the moment, all I wanted to do was ease my aching hunger. I decided to go to a fast food place 30 minutes away. I needed time to process the events of the day and to air out my worries. As expected, the long drive was relaxing, and I was able to ground myself firmly in reality. With my newfound peace of mind, I drove up to the drive-thru window and ordered a simple yet satisfying burger, fries, and soda. I parked in the lot and immediately unwrapped my burger. But just as I was about to take a bite, I noticed something strange. A man was a few feet away from my car, and there was something odd about him. I leaned in closer to get a better look, and was horrified at what I saw. His face was completely smooth and featureless. Instantly, I found myself back in my kitchen, and I let out a terrified yell when I realized that I had never left the house. Panicking, I ran to my phone and called the police. I knew there was probably nothing they could do about the spirit, but I thought that maybe they could at least help me get out of my prison. As soon as I pressed 911 on my phone, an operator answered. 911, what is your emergency? Hi, I need help getting out of my house, I said hesitantly. Why can't you leave your house? The operator asked with concern in her voice. Well, this is going to sound crazy, but I think there's a spirit in my house that is preventing me from leaving. That doesn't sound crazy, the operator said calmly. It doesn't? Oh, good. Because I wasn't sure if... There is nothing to worry about. We'll be together soon, she said before the call dropped. At that moment, I felt an intense burst of fear and anger. Why are you doing this to me? You can't keep me here, I screamed before running out of the house. I ran down the street until I couldn't run anymore. Out of breath and exhausted, I walked to the nearest house and banged on the door, pleading for them to help me. As soon as the door opened, I found myself back in my kitchen. Collapsing to the floor, I began to sob uncontrollably. It's been 10 days since that incident. As of 5 days ago, all the food I had left in the house has been consumed, including condiments. Every time I try to leave the house to get help, I find myself back in my kitchen, having never left. I can't call or text anyone because it's always it that responds. It has me completely trapped inside my house. As things are, I will soon starve to death. But I won't let that happen. If I have to die, then I'm going to die on my own terms. I've always had terrible luck making friends, I thought to myself as I placed the knife to my wrist. But maybe this time will be different. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, you know what to do. Take that like button and just make sure it stays in the kitchen for 3 weeks until it starves to death. And then smash it. Shout out to the author of this story, Reddit user awakeadrift. I will leave a link down below if you want to check out more of their work or send them a message and say, "What's up, great story." For those of you who are planning to have a lonely Halloween yourselves this weekend, I will be doing a live stream. If you didn't see my update video that I posted a couple days ago, I will be doing a live version of Talk Creepy to Me, the call-in show. So just keep an eye out for more details as the weekend approaches, or as Halloween approaches rather, and hope to see you there. Until next time, everybody, remember to stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.